Hello, viewers, and welcome back to IT IQ Wiz. I want you to hit that like and subscribe button, and here we go. Now, today I'm gonna be starting the assembly part of the video, and what we're gonna do firstly is I'm gonna assemble all the parts that connects directly to the motherboard, and then we're gonna take the motherboard and we're gonna place it in the chassis. All right, and then we're gonna start putting in our power supply, our hard drive, our CD drive in our system unit. And then the next video after that, we're gonna power on and see if it works and walk you through how we do some installation of the operating system. So here we go. So first thing that you should always ensure that you do is you gotta wear a wristband, right? For persons who are not so experienced using this, normally have it connected to the chassis, right? That will be a system unit in the end when you're putting in your motherboard and other components. But I've been doing this for a while, so I have developed strategies on how not to short out anything on the motherboard. Right, so first thing, we have the motherboard and everything here on a flat board, right, which doesn't conduct any kind of electricity, right? Meaning there's nothing on the motherboard that will put any electricity through any other parts here. So with no further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna take our CPU here and we're gonna place it where it needs to go on the motherboard. Right, so remember we've got a little pin on the CPU and it's supposed to go directly onto the motherboard, and there's some other markers. Let me just see if I can pinpoint those markers. I'm not too sure if you'll be able to see it on the video. So it can only go one way because we've got two little pins on the seating of the CPU. So we're just gonna place it so it fits directly in there. So you can't go wrong here. So here we go. Here we go. Now we're gonna lock it down with this part here on the motherboard. And then this lever, we're gonna push it forward and we're gonna lock it in place right there. So it's seated all snug. Right. Now the next thing we are gonna do is we're gonna take our fan and we're gonna place it on the CPU, right? And we're gonna bolt it down. Now there's a little connector right here. It connects to the motherboard, a tiny connector, right? So we're gonna turn it this way and place it on the motherboard. All right, just like that, and ensure all of those screw holes are lined up properly. And then we're gonna get a screwdriver and we're gonna screw it down. Right, I recommend that we only use a hand-powered screwdriver to screw down this part on the motherboard, because we want to ensure that we use our discretion to, make sure that we don't tighten these too much, because we don't want to break the circuit on the circuit board while doing this. So we do this in an evenly fashion all the way around until they all get all tight and snug. All right, there we go. So good, all good. Now remember, don't force anything because we don't want to break anything on the motherboard. And now we're gonna make the connection here to the motherboard. Good. And now we can actually hold this by here so we don't get anything else shorted. Now let's get that out of the way, and now we're gonna take our memory, our RAM, right? We spoke about that in our previous video, and we're gonna turn the motherboard around so you can see this better. And notice how I'm holding the memory, and remember we gotta line that up, a key, with the motherboard. Now we can use any of these right here, but we're gonna just use the one that is closest to the fan, right? So we can share some of the air that the fan uses to cool the CPU. Now notice how I'm holding the memory from the sides. I'd never hold the chips on the inside because we can short those things out. So we're not going to use those clips at the side. We don't do that, right? So we're going to just press on the memory until we hear some clicks, right? And yeah, that's it. All done. Simple, right? Now that we have assembled this motherboard with our processor or our CPU and our memory, now the next thing we're going to move to is we're going to move to assembling all of these parts onto our system, onto our shell. We're going to pause the video and then we continue from there. Okay, so we are back with our system unit shell here, right? And I've gone ahead and stripped out everything that you see on the table here out of it. Okay, now what I like to do first and foremost is I like to put the power supply into the shell, and the power supply goes here. I'm not too sure if you'll be able to see it how I'm holding it, but that little hole that you're seeing right there, we're gonna get a power supply in there. All right, and how we do this is we put it from the inside. So let's put our shell down and take the power supply here. Now it can only go in one direction, so we gotta ensure that we put this in correctly. And how we can do this for this model case or shell is that the light and the where the power cord goes, it goes to the back side. It goes to the far end of the shell here. So once we clip it in, it'll be all snug. As you can see, the light and where the power cord goes, yeah, they go in properly and they line up with the screw holes, as you can see. So we're gonna just screw those in now, anchor it down properly. Now there's a little clip that I mentioned before. As you can see, I'm going to show you right over here, right there. It holds the power supply in place. That gives us a chance to screw it in. And after it holds it in place, we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to get our screws and we're going to bolt it down. So here we go. Our screw. We're gonna screw that in. Good. That's one. Let's get the other one, and we're gonna screw that in as well. Now, as you can see, while I'm doing this, there's several wires on the power supply right there, and we are gonna tidy those up a little. At the end, you'll see just how neat and tidy we can get these wires so that we don't have them all over the place. Okay, so we have our last screw here, and I'm using a magnetic screwdriver so I can just place those screws on there and get them in real easy. Nice. Now, as you can see, our power supply is all bolted down. Let me see. Sorry, you can't see that so good, but the power supply is good. That's what matters. And now we're gonna just get these wires out of the way. And what I want to do is just get the motherboard in and, you know, connect all the other parts that we have in our previous video here. Now, as you can see, the back here has there's some cutouts that are there. It's just a little panel. I can actually push that out, and they're made for these parts on the motherboard. All right. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have to turn the motherboard around, right? So they all line up. All right, and I like to place my hand on the shell whenever I'm handling the motherboard in the shell, and that prevents any shortage or any, you know, static electricity. Yeah, that works there. So we gotta get it in there. We can also rest our elbow, just make contact with the shell. That should be good enough. And we're gonna place the motherboard as best as possible. So let's get these cords and wires out of the way so we can get the CPU all seated properly. Right, now we can see it's lined up with those holes that are in the chassis or the shell, and now we're gonna bolt it down. Let's get the screws and our screwdriver, and we're gonna bolt that down. and we still keep our hands while I'm touching the motherboard here. I have my hand rested against the shell right there when I'm touching the motherboard, because we absolutely do not want to short this out, right? Or else nothing will work properly after this. So we keep screwing it, but we don't need to tighten anything on the motherboard down too much. We just need to make sure that it is snug but not tight, right? Because we could end up breaking circuits on the motherboard, and as I said before, nothing will work properly. So let's get this right here. I apologize, you can't see too clearly what I'm doing here, but you get the idea of when you're doing this on your own. If you're doing it right now watching the video, you'll see where all those screw goes. So yeah, let's get that last one in, and there we go. Now our motherboard is all anchored in properly. Good. Now what we're gonna do next is we're gonna connect all the other parts, such as our hard drive and our CD drive in there. So let's stick around for the next video. Thank you for viewing once more. We're gonna put our hard drive in later. We're gonna put our CD drive in with our cables. All right, so we're gonna connect all those parts onto the power supply. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, hit that like and subscribe button. Stick around for the next one.